Good morning and welcome to this digital service of First Unitarian Church of Des Moines. My name is Karen Lauer and my pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I'm a member of this congregation. As we gather this morning, let us do so knowing that wherever we are on Indigenous land. The land our congregation's building is built on is on the traditional territory of the Bohoje people, also known as the Iowa. The service I give today was unexpectedly inspired by a meme and grew into a personal reflection on my own history of white privilege and culpability. I offer here an examination of my own identity in the context of being a Karen, with the hope that this reflection on my failings and my growth will encourage a broader reflection in all of us, our communities, and the ways we use and experience our power.
Our opening words this morning are by Reverend Kimberly Quinn Johnson. In the words of poet June Jordan, we are the ones we have been waiting for. We are not perfect, but we are perfectly fitted for this day. We are not without fault, but we can be honest to face our past as we chart a new future. We are the ones we have been waiting for. May we be bold and courageous to chart that new future. May we have faith in a future that is not known. We are the ones we have been waiting for. Our chalice lighting this morning is by Reverend Adrian L.H. Graham. We kindle a flame of power, illuminating the holy in each of our faces. We recognize in the flame a passionate commitment to our shared faith. We are held and carried from day to day, week to week, in the shining of the light. This flame is mine, as well as yours. We are brought together on this day, called to growth and expansion in its glow. What does your heart know while beholding this holy fire? Our gathering song this morning is 1022, Open the Window. Please keep your mics muted and we will post the lyrics in the chat. Good morning. My name is Birch Spick. My pronouns are they, them, and theirs, and I am the celebrant for this morning's service. Our pianist is Nancy Bratt, and our pastoral care associate for this coming week is Ellen Taylor. Whether you are here for the hour, for a lifetime, or somewhere in between, thank you for joining us in this community that grows ethically and spiritually, serves justly, and loves radically. This digital service is being recorded, and it will be available to view later on the church's website and YouTube page. Feel free to keep your cameras on, but please keep your mics muted in consideration of one another. After the service, we'll sort out into breakout rooms for a virtual coffee service, when we can turn our mics back on and stick around for conversation, fellowship, and your favorite snack or drink. Our Faith in Action partner for July and August is One Iowa. One Iowa's mission is to advance, empower, and improve the lives of LGBTQ Iowans statewide. Their vision is to seek to improve the lives of LGBTQ Iowans by protecting and advancing equality and inclusiveness through education, improving workplace culture, and increasing access to quality healthcare across our state. Their work includes providing training, mentorship, and education about LGBTQ issues to community members, service providers, and employers. Promoting policies within state and local government which protects the civil rights, health, and safety of LGBTQ Iowans, and connecting LGBTQ Iowans to community resources. Our story for all ages is Hands Up by Brianna J. McDaniel.
Hello and welcome back to another edition of Sankofa Read Aloud. Today's story is titled Hands Up by Brianna J. McDaniel, illustrated by Shane W. Evans. I hope that you enjoyed this beautiful story. Greet the sun, bold and bright, tiny hands up. Peekaboo, hands up. Morning, baby, time to get dressed. Hands up. Stretch high, almost there. Hands up. Gotta get clean. Reach for the sink. Hands up. Come on, little one. Dry your tears. Here, hold the bun. Hands up. Ready for takeoff? Hands up. Please pick me, Miss B. Got my hands up. Adventure books, live up top. Reach high, tippy toes, hands up. Graceful, like Miss Misty, fifth position, hands up. Racing fast, wind whistling, hands up. It's all right, baby girl, I'll help, hands up. The music flows through us, amazing grace. In praise and worship, hands up. On the court, fired up, jump ball, hands up. For the win, defense, hands up. On top of the world, trophy to the sky, hands up. We begin small, but we grow big. Together we are mighty. High fives all around, hands up. As one we say, hands up.
Good grammar and spelling are important, but if you want to write essays that inspire...
In the stewardship of community, which we care for, and which in turn cares for us, our actions, what we are willing to give of ourselves, show our values more clearly than our words. So in this offering, let us be grateful for all that we have and all that we can give. Half of Teze's offering will go to our Faith in Action partner, and the other half goes to our social justice work within and beyond this congregation. Outside of our physical church, instead of passing the offering basket, we encourage you to use the giving page on the church's website and mobile app. The link will be posted in the chat. That was beautiful, Nancy. Thank you. Distant by space, but gathered here across miles for this hour, we are here to bear witness to the joys and concerns in our lives and to minister to each other, however that may need to look like in this week, in this hour, in this day. When we are together in person, we lift up the names of those people we hold in our minds and in our hearts, aloud or silently. In this Zoom service, if you are carrying someone in joy or concern this morning, you may share their name in the chat box. Let our hearts also be with all those near and far, with people the world over who are in need of care and who care for their communities. For Jacob Blake, his family and community as they recover in Kenosha, Wisconsin. For students, teachers, and staff, for their families and communities as they return to school amid a surging pandemic. For protesters and those injured and arrested while speaking out against injustice. And for frontline workers in healthcare and service industries. May we bear witness to atrocities that flash before our eyes in quick succession. May we bear witness to the struggles to overcome, which we have not yet seen. In this community, it is our tradition to light 3 candles, one for the joys and concerns we have shared, for the names we have written, and for all that remains unspoken but present here in our hearts. May we carry these with us today.
Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul. Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul. Sing with me, sing with me, sing with me, oh my soul. Sing with me, sing with me, sing with me, oh my soul.
Our first reading this morning is How to Be a White Neighbor in a Black Neighborhood. This is an article published in the Chicago Sun-Times in October 2019, written by Natalie Y. Moore. Well-meaning white people often ask me how they can be a good neighbor if they move into a Black or Latino neighborhood. I give simple advice: be a good neighbor. This means don't come in with a savior mentality hitched to your moving truck. Don't start your own block club or community organization. Join the existing one. Smile and say good morning to your neighbors. Don't write off the neighborhood schools. Understand the cultural fabric of the new place you call home. Don't call the police. In the clearest terms, don't be a colonizer. As demographic patterns shift in Chicago and segregation dissipates in some communities, cultural clashes are inevitable. With thoughtfulness and respect, neighbors can forge a different way forward. A scenario where minor disputes don't escalate into a situation where longtime residents feel marginalized, where neighborhood listservs don't demonize children for being loud, where safety talk isn't cloaked in racism. I also like to give an example of what not to be. Washington, D.C., a city where gentrification acts as a pencil eraser to Black folk. I love DC. I attended Howard University, an illustrious Black college, in the 1990s. And since I graduated, the physical and demographic landscape has starkly transformed. The surrounding neighborhood is no longer all Black. Classy high-rises form a perimeter around the campus. Early this year, a cell phone store near Howard, which has played go-go music on the corner for decades, got a demand from nearby luxury apartment dwellers. Stop playing the music. Too noisy, they said. But go-go lovers and those resisting gentrification quickly organized, refusing to be complicit in silencing Black culture. A petition started and birthed #Don'tMuteDC. The cell phone store parent company said the music could play on. This past weekend, I reveled at Howard's homecoming, a joyous, rapturous occasion. Before Saturday's football game, the entire week is electric. Parties, happy hours, laughters on the street, concerts. On Friday night, 2 alumni friends who live near campus hosted a party in their Victorian home, as they've done for 19 years. A go-go band jammed in their dining room. A red "Don't Mute DC" poster conspicuously hung on the wall. The police showed up. Officers noted multiple complaints. Nothing untoward happened. The band ended at 11 p.m. as the police pulled up. I shudder to think what the scenario could have spiraled into. Homecoming is inconvenient. Parking is scarce. Traffic is bad. But so what? Newcomers to the neighborhood who complain about homecoming, as they have done on listservs, need to adapt. When white people move near Howard, they must remember they chose to live in essentially a mini college town. Earlier this year, a white DC resident suggested that Howard should move its campus after students complained that the yard, the university's common area, was being used as a neighborhood dog park. Howard has been in that location since 1867. Some behaviors are worse than gentrification. Cities are messy, noisy, complex. Too many people desire a sterile urban-suburban experience. So when I'm asked by those well-meaning white people here in Chicago what they can do, I use Washington, D.C. and Howard as an example. Don't be that neighbor. Our words for reflection this morning are by Reverend Dr. Jennifer Kupano Kwong. Thought I was so smart, till I didn't know the answer to why evil exists in the world. Thought I was so enlightened, till I discovered comfort in darkness for a while. Thought I was so liberal, till my good intentions produced opposite results. Thought I was so colorblind, till my eyes began to see differences that should be honored. Thought I was an ally when what was called for was an advocate instead. Let these words remain with us as we enter into a time of meditation, reflection, or prayer. Breathe in and breathe out. Center yourself with your feet on the ground, your hands in your lap, eyes closed, shoulders relaxed. Whatever helps you enter into the center of this moment. Breathe in and breathe out. Eyes open again, hands in your lap, feet beneath you on the ground. Come back into this space we share together. Our second reading is by Trey Johnson, published in the Washington Post in June 2020. Once again, as the latest racial travesty pierces our collective conscience, I watch many of my white friends and acquaintances perform the same pieties they played out after Trayvon, Eric, Sandra, Corinne, Botham, Brianna. They're savvy, practiced consumers of meaningful things. They've listened to Serial and become expert critics of our broken criminal justice system after just one season. They've watched Insecure and can suddenly imagine life as Molly or Issa. They've shared the preordained amplifying social media post that just reads this, followed by a link to something profound from a Black voice. This is all to say that when things get real, really murderous, really tragic, really violent or aggressive, my white, liberal, educated friends already know what to do. What they do is read and talk about reading. What they do is listen and talk about how they listened. But those actions are fraught. Book clubs, for instance, are comfortable gatherings of friends who are unlikely to nudge one another to the places of discomfort that these books, at their best, demand. Who wants to damage a relationship over something as abstract and removed as racism? Learning about new perspectives and the ideas underlying them is great. Wanting to discuss them among friends in safe spaces is understandable. But outside the window, people are marching to the beat of a different drum. Right now, many of my Black friends are also experiencing the temporary phenomenon of the outreach. A surging of checking in texts and emails, gifts, meals, private DMs, giving and sometimes seeking in the same message, support. This is the racial Ouroboros our country finds itself locked in. As Black Americans relive an endless loop of injustice, and white Americans keep revisiting the same performance, a Broadway show that never closes, just on hiatus now and then. This is our own racial Ouroboros. The chaos we see now, in part from the chaos foisted upon us for generations. The injustice we protest isn't rooted in just police killings. It lives also within the housing and school choices, social and professional networks, the defunding of non-white organizations, the demotion and firing of Black employees, the microaggressions and slights that happen at dinner parties, restaurants, cafes, and concerts. Right acknowledgement of Black justice, humanity, freedom, and happiness won't be found in your book clubs, protest signs, talks, or organizational statements. It will be found in your earnest willingness to dismantle systems that stand in our way, be they at your job, in your social network, your neighborhood associations, your family, or your home. It's not just about amplifying our voices, it's about investing in them and in our businesses, education, political representation, power, housing, and art. It starts also with reflection on the harm you've probably caused in a Black person's life. It may have happened when you were 10, 16, 22, 36, 42. Comforting as it may be to read and discuss the big questions on race and injustice and America, making up for past wrongs means starting with the fact that you've done wrong in the past, perhaps without realizing at the time, in the old workspace, the neighborhood, the classroom, the softball field, maybe even the book club. Our centering song this morning is 1020 Wo Ya Ya, and the words are in the chat.
We are going, heaven knows where we are going, but we know within, and we will get there. Heaven knows where we will get there, but we know we will. It will be hard, we know, and the road will be many and rough, but we'll get there. Heaven knows where we will get there, but we know we will. Oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah. We are going, heaven knows where we are going, but we know within, and we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. Oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, 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 oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, 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 oh yeah, 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 oh yeah, 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 yeah.
The music was pounding. Waves of sound assaulted my senses, each pulsing beat of the bass reverberating throughout my body until I thought I would scream. And I almost did. It had gone on all afternoon that sweltering July day, along with the deafening rap music were people drinking in the street, cars parked every which way in the empty lot at the corner, voices rising louder and louder in sonic competition. The woman who rented the house across from us had lost her son in a nightclub shooting the week before. We were new to the neighborhood and I was too uncomfortable to go talk to her, but urged my husband to express our condolences for her loss. She told my husband her son left behind a girlfriend and 2 little boys. But this was intolerable, wasn't it? This party in the street? I had tolerated the noise all day, but it was nearing midnight and I was losing my mind. And we called the police. Or rather, I asked my husband to. It was the first time I called the police in my majority-minority neighborhood in the heart of Des Moines, the red-lined Black neighborhood that still suffers from 60-plus years of disinvestment as its cracked sidewalks, abandoned houses, and crumbling streets attest. I cringe now at the hubris and naivete of that call. That time, at least, the officer who answered suggested we wait it out, let them have their grief. I'm ashamed of myself for that call and many others I've made to law enforcement during the 14 years we've lived here. The times when my phone call might have put another human being's life in danger, a Black person's life, because my white lady sensibilities were offended, or I was afraid. There is a meme going around on social media now, calling out this behavior and the women who embody it as Karens. My first instinct was to declare not all Karens, but I realized that wasn't true. Not only is my name Karen, but I have also been a Karen multiple times over the years. There was the time also shortly after we moved into the neighborhood when a neighbor was burning something in the garage behind his house. The acrid smoke poured from the stovepipe that was just visible over the overgrown trees lining the alley between our houses. Black and thick, it flowed directly into my kitchen windows. Again, I didn't knock on the neighbor's door. I didn't ask him what he was burning. Instead, I listened to my inner white woman and assumed he must be doing something illegal. What if he was cooking meth? It was dangerous, right? We called the police on our Black neighbor. We never found out what he was burning, but later discovered he ran a small neighborhood repair shop. He used the stove to warm the garage. A few years after we moved in, gang activity in the city picked up. The sound of gunfire rang out nearly every couple of days that year. The neighbor's car and garage were shot up one night, and another night we heard rapid shots, pop, 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 outside our son's bedroom window. We called the cops then too. The next morning, we discovered a bullet hole in our siding. We called the cops like so many others in the area whenever we heard gunshots. I'm inclined to think that isn't really Karening. But what was truly disturbing was when a cop told my husband, in reference to the young Black man living next door, "Give us a call if you ever feel uncomfortable." Let that sink in for a minute. Call law enforcement, white people, if ever these Black people make you feel uncomfortable. Calling the police on a person of color for any reason can be a death sentence for that person. It took a long time for me to get over being uncomfortable in my neighborhood, but that wasn't due to my neighbors. It was my own prejudice. For the first time in my life, I was the minority. I was a privileged, middle-aged white woman living in a minority neighborhood, and I stuck out like a sore thumb. But not because of my neighbors, because of my own racially biased insecurities. We've watched multiple times over the years as squad cars and police vans descend on a house in the neighborhood. We rarely see a cop who isn't actively policing. I grew up believing that the policeman is my friend, but kids in my neighborhood grow up fearing law enforcement. Black mothers caution their teenagers, especially their sons, on how to behave when pulled over by the cops, and they will be pulled over on pretextual stops. Just last year, the city of Des Moines paid a $75,000 settlement to 2 Black men for just such an unwarranted stop. I've attended community meetings in which Black mothers detailed the times, as many as 20 or more, that their sons were pulled over by Des Moines police for no real reason. Called Driving While Black, a Stanford University study found that Black drivers are 20% more likely to be pulled over by law enforcement than white drivers, revealing an obvious bias, especially when compared to percentage of population. A Black Des Moines state legislator has shared being pulled over while driving his Cadillac. Once the officers realized who he was, they apologized. Apparently, it is suspicious for a Black man to drive a nice car. A few years ago, I gave a sermon at First Unitarian about recognizing my historical privilege as a white woman and having to confront my own racial prejudice after we moved to this neighborhood. One kind white woman came up to me afterward and said, "I don't know how you could have gotten used to the noise. I never could have done that." And there you have the essence of being a Karen. My neighborhood is one of the poorest in Des Moines. Our zip code has the greatest number of abandoned and crumbling properties, the lowest level of income and education, the schools in most desperate need. The city doesn't invest in my neighborhood, ever. A year or so ago, we spotted the flashing lights of multiple police cars outside the dining room window. I peeked out to see 4 squad cars boxing in another car, a Black man with his hands held high. I watched, but I didn't do anything. I was too intimidated by authority, too scared, too white to use my privilege to video the encounter, the only protection from potential police brutality I could offer. On a walk this summer, we heard a man yelling in his front yard, "Go ahead, just get your gun." It was apparently a domestic situation, We don't know the family, and it was several blocks from our house. We called the police. I regret that decision now. There are so many other options to calling law enforcement. I could have asked a nearby neighbor if they knew the family and for suggestions on what to do. We could have called out to ask him if he needed help and to make sure he was okay. We could have called the mobile mental health unit. So many times I have called the police instead of getting involved, instead of taking a deep breath. Instead. You see, cops don't often prevent crimes, violent or otherwise, and the targeted and heavy policing in minority neighborhoods often leads to more violence. It is sobering and frightening to think that my call, whether justified or not, could end someone's life. Last year, just before dawn, one cold March morning, our neighbor's house was raided by the FBI with a fully equipped SWAT team. We woke to hear pounding on their door and FBI opened the door, followed by the sound of a flashbang. At least 10 FBI vehicles and vans crowded the street and multiple officers, weapons drawn, surrounded the house. Later, we noticed a hazmat unit. I watched the mom come out, wrapped in a blanket, her 7-year-old little boy trailing behind her, his skinny arms raised above his head, wearing just his underwear. Her adult sons both have served time in the past. We don't know the specific crimes. There had been gang violence at their house off and on for the whole time we've lived in the neighborhood. This time, they were arrested for drug trafficking and weapons violations as heads of C Block, the gang in whose territory our neighborhood falls. Just the summer before the raid, one of the young men walked his toddler down the sidewalk to sniff the flowers in our front yard. He was so proud of his little boy and so gentle. I wonder about this young man's introduction to the justice system and how much that was influenced by race. I worry about the toddler who will have to grow up without his daddy. I worry about the mom and can't imagine the depths of her anger nor her sorrow, and how those emotions mix with the abiding love she has for all her children. I know she remembers holding their tiny newborn bodies in her arms, inhaling that sweet baby smell. She never imagined this. And I worry about the little boy, the 7-year-old. How will this affect him? Will he be able to process the trauma? Will he be able to avoid his older brother's fates? I worry about any victims of the alleged crimes, their families and livelihoods. We went over to the mom's house the next day. I had to tell her that I know her boys are much more than just their crimes. She thanked us profusely and apologized. We told her it wasn't her fault. Then she said, "I have to believe it's God's way of keeping my boys alive." She believes her sons are safer in prison than in their community. They say the first step to change is recognizing you have a problem. I have vowed to learn more about defunding police and to make sure I question my first or my second impulse to call. Defunding the police isn't nearly as scary as it sounds. It is simply a call to change our priorities, to divest some of what we spend on law enforcement, incarceration, and the increasing militarization of local police departments, and instead invest in school counselors and teachers, community mental health services, and our minoritized communities. I hope our society will recognize its own deep sickness, the systemic racism woven into every fiber of our nation. A few weeks ago, in the midst of local Black Lives Matter protests, late on a Sunday afternoon, a news bulletin flashed across my computer screen. The county had declared a curfew that would start in just a few hours, and friends around town posted on social media the massing of militarized police units in a nearby high school parking lot and behind the state capitol building. My first instinct was to dash across the street to warn the neighbors. I took off in one direction, my husband in another, to let our neighbors know about the curfew and the potentially dangerous police response to protests. My fear this time was for my neighbors, not myself. I now have a deeper understanding of who actually is in the greatest danger in my neighborhood, my community, and my country. And it isn't me, my white family, or my white community. It will be the work of a lifetime to counter the impulses my socialized white lady privilege often leads me to, but it is work I am grateful to undertake. The more I can fight against my own socialization, the greater will be my connection with others. It's relationship that leads us to recognize that our own humanity is directly linked to the lives of others. I am thankful to be recovering parts of my humanity I didn't even realize I had lost. And though I still stick out in my neighborhood, it's now most likely the result of my tendency to dive for discarded change in the street, my daily long walks, and my 2 goofy basset hounds.
We extinguish the flame we have shared in this hour. Yours, mine, ours. And though its glow is gone from before us, may we carry the growth and expansion it has illuminated with us and within us in the days to come. Our closing song this morning is 1017, Building a New Way. Our closing words are by Reverend Dr. William Sinkford, former president of the UUA. We are a gentle and generous people, but let us not forget our anger. May it fuel not only our commitment to compassion, but also our commitment to make fundamental changes. Our vision of beloved community must stand against a vision that would allow the privilege of a few to be accepted as just and even holy. Our religious vision must again and again ask, who is my neighbor? and strive always to include more and more of us. As we intone the words that gave birth to this nation, we the people, we are, and we should be, both a gentle and an angry people. This service has ended, but our service in the wider world, in our lives, continues. Peace, Ashe, and may it be so.